Okay, so Austin Valley, you are the co-chair of YIMBY, which means Yes in My Backyard.
That's
Can
right.
you tell me a little bit about the organization?
Sure, absolutely. So we started about 6 months or so ago, and we started in response to a need that we saw in the community, which is that there's a terrible housing affordability crisis. Orlando is the 5th least affordable area in the country for housing when you adjust for wages. And no one was talking about the issue of the housing shortage that we saw. And so there's a lot that goes into the housing affordability problem, but nothing was trying to solve this shortage issue. And so we looked around, and I wanted to get involved in an organization, to volunteer, be part of something. And as I started to look around, I realized there was no one doing this work already. And so my co-lead and I decided that we should be the ones to start it. And we've just kind of hit the ground running with it.
And can I ask, what kind of situation were you in yourself that made you even look around and notice that this was a problem?
Well, I subscribe to all sorts of newspapers and news sites, and it's there every single day, right? Talking about the affordability issue. Myself, I've had to deal with trying to rent, trying to buy. My friends, my family, people I know, people I care about. We all feel it. Everybody knows it. We read about it every single day. I just didn't feel like there was a lot of solutions going on, just a lot of talking about the problem. And, some of us are just wired to not want to just talk about the problem, but want to find a solution, and that's how we sort of describe ourselves.
So this actually is a show, Solutionaries. We focus on finding solutions and finding the people who are finding solutions. So we would say that you're a solutionary yourself, and the problem is the lack of affordable housing. So what are some creative ideas that you guys have come up with that you have seen be successful in our community? Sure,
yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of things. So for example, there's been some cities that have had a lot of luck with essentially allowing there to be greater density citywide. So for example, right now we're about 2 miles from downtown. But if you look at a lot of the houses around the neighborhood, you are only allowed to build a single family home. That's it. That's all you're allowed to build. If you wanted to build a duplex, it's illegal. If you wanted to build a fourplex, it's illegal. Certainly a 3-story apartment complex, that's illegal, right? And so we say we want to legalize housing. We don't want to mandate there be a duplex, mandate there be a fourplex, but we want to allow it, right? We want to naturally allow a little bit more what we call gentle density to enter our neighborhood so that there's a greater supply of housing, which is going to drive the price further down.
And what are some of the things that put us in this situation? I think you talked about how quickly the Orlando metropolitan area is growing. What are some of those growing pains?
Yeah, I think it's the only thing, I kind of joke, the only thing worse than a region that's growing is a region that's not growing, right? We should be grateful for the growth. Growth is good, but we have to figure out how to find places where people can live. Because if our supply of housing is not increasing by the same extent as our demand, it's simple economics. The price is going to continue to outstrip what people can afford. We saw that housing prices just this year alone, from January to now, are up about 10%. Right? Wages have not grown 10% since January. So something's out of whack there, and we see a big piece of it, not the only piece, but a big piece of it is increasing the supply so that there's enough housing for people to live in.
And so, your organization, you focus on finding those solutions, but you can't do that on your own. So how do you go out and get more people involved in this conversation?
Yeah, sure. We've got a number of volunteers that help us, and we reach out to the community in other ways to continue to get volunteers. Some key ways that works is showing up to public comment. We say yes to housing, and we say yes in my backyard. At meetings about specific developments, there's big programs going on. So for instance, Orange County is undergoing its big Vision 2050 plan, where it's going to figure out what its plan is going to look like and its growth is going to look like over the next 30 years. We are involved in that process. So we're bringing volunteers, policy experts, but also just people who are passionate about this and people who have a vested interest in housing affordability. So we meet with elected officials about those things. We make public comment about those things. We get out the word, right? We do social media. We write op-eds in newspapers. We just want to get this message out that this is something that's important, and we bring lots of folks in to help us do that.
And can you talk to me a little bit about the area where we're walking right now? We're in College Park, that's in Orlando, Florida. Have you guys done any work here? What could be done that's better?
Yeah, so this is my neighborhood, College Park. Love College Park. There's so much to love about College Park. We're walking by retail, restaurants. There's a few things I think about. One is when you add a little bit more gentle density in here, it provides more customers for these restaurants and for this retail, right? You want to have people who can walk, who can bike into your establishments to help that commerce and keep that economy strong. Some level of height is okay. I always say the best thing you can do for a restaurant is put 3 floors of housing on top of it, right? Because now you have a natural customer base of people who can go enjoy that restaurant. We have some of that further down Edgewater on places like the Wellesley. We have the Princeton, that's an apartment complex. That stuff is good for commerce, it's good for growth. We just need, some more of that, and then to increase some gentle density around duplexes, fourplexes, some greater density than that as well. You know, I make a point to say we're not talking about putting a high-rise right in the middle of College Park. We don't want to put a high-rise in the middle of Audubon Park or Baldwin Park, right? This sort of natural density that makes sense to the area. But right now, the balance that we found is so out of whack and just doesn't meet the problem that we have in front of us, that we just need to shift that balance a little bit and make sure that we're adding density where it makes sense, so that it's supporting the economy, supporting our affordability problem, and making sure that, well, really making sure that the affordability problem isn't ongoing.
And what can we do in areas like this one where, you know, these places were here first? So is that a matter of, do we look to change what's already there, or is it just focus on better planning in the future?
Yeah, it's accurate. It's a great question. It's better planning going on in the future, right? So for example, today, and this happens every single day, we could walk a block and see it happening, is people will buy a single family home, they tear it down, and then build a bigger single family home in its place. What we're saying is, if that tear down is going to occur, let's give them the option to put 2, 3, 4 units there in its place, right? Because now each of those 4 units is going to be less expensive than the single unit there. So this doesn't happen overnight. It's taken us decades to get into the problem that we have, and it might take us some time to get out of it, but we have to start that work now, or else we're just going to keep talking about this 10, 20, 30 years from now.
So instead of just talking, we want to act. And again, we talked about how this show, Solutionaries, focuses on solutions. So my last question for you is, if someone hears this conversation and they're like, wow, I can relate to that. I've, you know, struggled with finding affordable housing myself. What can they do to be a part of solving the affordable housing crisis?
Yeah, you know, the most important thing, this is a policy problem, and so it's going to require a policy solution, right? So the first thing you need to do is email your city commissioner, email your county commissioner, email your mayor, and say, I recognize there's a housing shortage and we need more housing, right? If you're not sure of the best way to do that and the most organized way to do that, reach out to Orlando YIMBY. We're doing it every single day. We believe that there's strength in numbers, and that we can together go to these policymakers, these candidates, and say that this is important to us, this is going to solve a problem, and we need to do it as a community and as a neighborhood. And so reach, you know, orlandoyimby.org, check us out, but certainly the way to solve this is through policy, and that's what we're going to be focused on, is organizing in that way.
Well, like you said, there's nothing wrong with growth, but you can always grow better. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today. We learned a lot.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Be sure to subscribe to Solutionaries to see all our latest videos right here on YouTube.